Morning, everyone. Now you can even see my face. Okay, so I hope everybody's safe and sound, whether in Santander or somewhere else. I'm going to minimize my face right now, okay, so that I can show you. This is in the Moodle platform. This is the new topic that we're covering this week, okay? Remember, you can also check the presentations about individual countries. Here you already have a few, and you can also find a couple of comments. Okay, actually a couple, my own and Kira's. Okay, so I hope I can see more comments there. Okay, about the presentations. Then I've also seen that most of you have already uploaded the concept map. Okay, the concept map is not extremely important. It's not going to be a big part of your assessment, but I'm checking that it works. Okay, that you can upload the concept map, so you will be able to upload the other things like the article reviews and the final paper. So Europe versus the USA. Here you will find a PowerPoint presentation that you can download easily, and then I'm gonna show you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so just you follow the links in the presentation. You have some links, specific links about the American Dream, and also about the European Dream or Europeanism, and also about the problems of migration. And there are a couple of articles that I want you to read also. One of them is called Cousins, and it talks about the differences between the UK and the USA. I think there are a couple of inaccuracies that you will be able to notice. But in general, I think it's interesting. Okay, it's a cross-cultural approach. Okay, and there are a few ideas that may be useful for you for your final paper. And then articles 6 and 9, both of them come from the book by Emma Hartley. One has to do with one of the bigger contrasts between Americans and Europeans, which is the number of hours they work. Okay, and number 9 is about the European Union's constitution and the American Constitution. Okay, so let me show you then, if we go to this presentation. Okay, European culture and civilization. You already know the main purpose of the final paper. Okay, what is then a European? As I said, in response to the Quebecers' definition of Americans, what is then the Americans? So I want you to think about Europeans. So American history and character have been shaped by 3 important myths. One of them is the American Dream. Okay, the other one is the melting pot, and the other one is the manifest destiny. I think we already talked about this in class. Here you have a few links about the American Dream. Okay, one of them is this TED Talk. Okay, most of the links that you can find here have to do with the Xavier University. So there's an American university that is working on this. So, well, here you also have 5 myths about the American Dream. From there's an article from the Washington Post. Okay, so you can agree stuff, and it should work. Okay, then Center for the Study of the American Dream, and here in the Reality of the American Dream. This is also from the same university, but a different scholar. Okay, basically they analyze through interviews how alive the American Dream is. Okay, so and the problem we could say about the American Dream is also how to define it. Okay, because it's a dream of freedom and of opportunities. You know, the idea that anybody can get rich, anybody can become president. You know, it's a dream of success, but there are also some American nightmares. No, And they have created here what they call the American Dream Composite Index. Okay, and there they consider a number of things. Okay, like economic aspects, well-being, societal diversity, environmental. So they look at the different dimensions. And also other facts, and depending on each of the factors, there are more people, for example, like political freedom, 85%. People are very happy with that. Okay, but other ideas like the melting pot, for example, well, the diversity is 68%. And then in other things, you have like trust in government. Okay, that's very low, 45%, for example. So they try to turn this myth of the American dream into a fact, okay, a measurable fact. So read a bit about this for the American dream, and also about the melting pot and the manifest destiny. As you know, the melting pot is basically this idea. How do you deal with immigration? How do you deal with people coming from different origins? You know, the myth is that you go to the States, you come from anywhere in the world, and you become an American. Again, well, of course, things, as you know, are more complicated, and now people prefer to talk about the idea of the salad pot, okay, where a carrot is a carrot, an orange, sorry, a tomato is a tomato, lettuce is lettuce, okay, and then you can mix them all, and then it tastes fine, but everybody keeps their own identity, right? So you apply this metaphor to people, okay, and it may reflect better the variety and diversity that you can find in the States. And the idea of the manifest destiny has to do more with politics, foreign policy, you know, and how well the Americans felt or have felt at different times during their history that they had a responsibility or they had a destiny, okay, that was connected also to religion, and how they were allowed, let's say, to conquer all of the land they had up until the Pacific and beyond. Okay, so well, you can read a bit about this in the presentation. Okay, as I say there, the myths are still alive in many ways, and their effects can be seen on many different aspects, you know. And for example, the connection between the American dream and individualism, you know, or something that we can find very difficult to understand in Europe. Americans love of guns, okay, and but this is also connected to their history, right? Anyway, the focus of your paper is not going to be America. Okay, the focus of your paper is going to be Europe. So, using these ideas, then what is then a European? Is there such a thing as the European identity? So, I ask you to consider the European Union, the Monetary Union, the Euro, but also the Council of Europe and other identity-forming elements like the Erasmus program or the Schengen Agreement, the Cultural Capital of Europe, or even UEFA and the Eurovision Song Contest, right? Here you have a few links about Europeanism by this guy called McCormick, based on the ideas of Habermas and Derrida, okay? And also a few links about the European dream, okay? Mainly this has been proposed by this is an American scholar called Jeremy Rifkin, and there are several things that are related, okay? Or I mean that you can say they are part of what he calls these guys call Europeanism, or what Rifkin calls the European dream. They're quite similar. The idea of secularization, trust in the state and skepticism about the achievement of markets, realistic expectations about technological progress, welfareism, a low threshold of tolerance for the use of force, or multilateralism. And more or less, this is where I develop, following McCormick, these ideas, you know. So the idea of cosmopolitanism, you know, the association with universal ideas, you know, like being a citizen of the world, or communitarianism in contrast to the emphasis on the individual, this idea of collective society and welfareism, which is connected to the idea of social market as opposed to free market. So yeah, capitalism is fine, the free market works very well, but then you also need a stronger state than you can find in the United States, you know? So things like healthcare or pensions, in Europe in general, people pay more taxes, okay, and they receive more in exchange, okay? So I think this is part of the idea of Europeanism. Also, the ideas of sustainable development or the redefinition of family. And then the idea of working to live. If you read the article about the number of hours that American work compared to the number of hours that European works, you will see that this is also something that could be part of the idea of the European dream. Then the opposition to capital punishment, which is prohibited in all European Union. So this idea of self-defense and also connected to punishment, okay, or the use of violence. Okay, I think this is also where you can find, you know, let's say like an Atlantic border, okay, between the States and Europe. Multiculturalism, secularism, you know, people in Europe are much less religious than in the States. And also, you know, related to foreign policy, the idea of multilateralism, or basically trying to work with other people in bigger forums, you know, like the United Nations, rather than imposing your ideas when you are a big country dealing with smaller countries. So if you adapt these ideas to the European context, you have to try to answer the following questions. What are the different European dimensions? We have dealt with this in previous presentations. Okay, and is there a European dream? And here you have some of the same ideas, you know, like respect for human rights, opposition to the death penalty, economic success with better distribution. So, because this is one of the big problems in the States, from my point of view, that's the problem of inequality. So when you consider success, you have to consider not just, you know, GDP, but also the development index. For example, the lifespan in the States is not as big as I think it should be for such a rich country. Then literacy rates or quality of life, you know. Also, humanitarian aid. This is something which is Europe right now is the provider of 47% of all the humanitarian aid in the world. Okay. This idea of the social market that I have mentioned before, you can also describe it as global economic market regulation, or also related to multilateral diplomacy, the idea of soft power as opposed to, you know, hard power or strong power. And then is there not just a European dream, but also a European melting pot? Should there be one, you know? So how do we deal with immigration? Here you have a couple of nice links, because in France and in the UK, there have been different approaches, and in one of these articles here, you will find the proposal, which is basically to combine the French solution with the British solution. Also, the idea of the European manifest destiny, or like how should Europe expand its influence outside the border? So the idea of cosmopolitanism, multilateralism, to extend European values, okay? And there's a maximum of 15 minutes in this video, so I hope things are clear, okay? You have all the instructions for the final paper also in the blog, all right? So if anybody has any questions, just you can write a comment here, or you can send me a message and email, okay, and I will answer it, okay? But I think it's fairly clear. Hope so. Okay, so keep safe and let's stay in touch. Bye.